Our lives are laid out on a road of bumps, turns, struggles, and more. How do we respond? How do we endure adversity for learning and growth? I'm Aubrey Johnson, and we'll explore these questions and more on The Road to Rediscovery. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on life lessons to learn and grow from them, and of course, pay it forward and uplift others who are struggling through dark times. Now, a quick reminder that the hard copy version of Relentless, Empowering Stories of Overcoming Adversity, this book is now available on Amazon. And like I mentioned in previous posts and previous episodes, I had an absolute blast in co-authoring this book. You get a glimpse into a significant part of my story, of my journey, along with my 19 other colleagues. This is an extraordinary book. If you have the need to feel inspired, or you want to feel inspired with your own challenges, I encourage you to get a copy of this book. This book is for you. Now, you can get it for $22 on Amazon, or you can email me at roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com. That's roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com, and get an autographed copy of this book by yours truly for a lesser price, for a discounted price. So either way you want, I think you will be truly inspired and motivated by these stories. Again, that's roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com. Fantastic. So on to my special guest, okay? My special guest is a transformational leadership coach with over 40 years in the business of coaching, training, and business coaching, right? With her mission to support and help her clients transform how they lead and impact, and with impact and influence, they are seeing incredible results in both their personal and professional lives. Ladies and gentlemen, let's please welcome Jeanette Mundy to the show. Jeanette, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Aubrey. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're thrilled to have you here, as you can hear. So let's do this, okay? I want to start off, if you can share with us the part of your journey, the part of your story that inspired you to blaze the path of transformation, okay, and development and helping others. And then after that, we'll dive into this whole being and behavior philosophy, right? So if you can just give us that part of your journey where you were inspired to delve deeper into transformation and really get the essence of it for helping others.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I was actually a 15-year-old girl. And I was teaching these two little kids to swim. So I was a swimming teacher from the moment that I was, a teenager. It was in my whole family.
Yeah.
And I took school groups, and there's one school group, these two little boys were in my group, and they had come from very troubling families. So one little boy had severe brain damage because of abuse from his father. The other little boy was frightened of blood because he'd seen some awful stuff. So anyway, at that stage, I just took this step back and went, whoa, what's happening?
Yeah.
Gosh, what's happening? What? And you can imagine as a 15, 16-year-old girl, I'm going, I didn't even know the world was like this.
Yeah.
I had no idea that this sort of stuff went on. So I started to question, what is it that is creating this, that men are abusing their children? What is it going on with women? How are these little boys going to be able to carry themselves into the world if this is going on for them? Will they continue this, cycle of abuse? And so I learned that very early. I didn't realize just that there were all these different levels of abuse. And look, abuse is the basis for me.
Yes.
But when I look out to the world, what I see is all these possibilities that actually wow, what if we could connect all the dots and people could relate better, not only to themselves, but to the people in their lives, in their organizations, and what might that look like? So I'm this person that starts to put all of these pieces together and connect the dots. So it's led me to this continual study of transformation and what that looks like and why we need to transform ourselves.
I see. Absolutely tremendous. And it sounds like you're naturally a curious person, right? And curiosity drives inspiration, drives tenacity, because you want to find these answers out, right? I mean, how will these boys deal with their lives as they go into adulthood after having such traumatic circumstances, and questions like that, right?
Yeah. And those questions were always in my mind. And you mentioned curiosity, and that's exactly what I am, is curious.
Hmm.
But the interesting thing about curiosity for me is that you can be curious and just remain curious without intention.
True.
And
Very
so,
true.
yeah, and so it took me quite a while to figure out where I fit, where my place was in this realm. And so I
Hmm.
spent,
Hmm.
the better part of 27, 30 years
Yeah.
small business and transforming people within my swim school, my own swim school, and supporting people to kind of, the parents, the children, and the teachers to all relate better with each other so that we could transform how the children understand themselves in the water and their fears and all kinds of things. So I
Hmm.
fit there very, very nicely into that little package for a long time.
Mm.
But this yearning was always so deeply within me. And so I had to really shift and say, okay, what does it look like for me to do this intentionally? So that's when I
Yes.
started to discover, ways in which I really wanted to work in the world with transformation beyond the swim school.
Amazing, amazing. And you brought up a very good point, when, mentioning curiosity. You can have curiosity and not really take action or pursue. And then, there are those whose curiosity compels them to pursue, compels them because they want to know the answers. I mean, and this is where we begin kind of dabbling into the introspection portion of our conversation, right? Where I'd love to know if you can share from your insights, what is what where does the differentiation, is that a word, differentiation?
Yeah,
How
it
do we
is.
differentiate? Okay, how do we differentiate between one who has curiosity, but doesn't really make much of an effort to pursue or find anything deeper, and someone with the same level of curiosity, but they feel this compulsion to pursue, to find answers? What drives one but not the other? If you have any thoughts on that.
Mm, mm. Okay, so each of us is unique. We know that.
Hmm.
There's
Hmm.
nothing disputing that we're all unique.
Right.
We cannot be the same as each other.
Right.
But the expression of our uniqueness is often remains hidden.
Yes.
Expression of that just remains clouded with all of the kind of mess that's going on in the world.
Yes.
We as human beings
Hmm.
take on so much content. We listen to so much content out in the world.
Yeah.
And that content, what it does is it can tend to sway our perceptions and our narratives, and how our roles in the world. We just see ourselves inside of all this different content that we're taking on, and often it's in a very inaccurate view of the world. So we might be
Right.
looking out there and saying and having all these views and opinions and webs of perception and all of this stuff, and that can be getting in our way. So what we have to do is really look deeply at who and how we're being. So we have to go beyond the behavior. So we can, there's a lot of work in the world around changing behaviors and habits and so forth, but really not a lot of that sticks unless at a deeper level we are looking at how we're viewing the world. What is the lens that we're looking at the world through? And is it biased? Is it skewed? Is it etched with a whole heap of different narratives that are telling us that we're either not good enough or not smart enough or not something else enough? All of our inadequacies. That's what's going to get in the way of actually taking the action, not the fact that we're not disciplined, or we can be quite disciplined in one area of life, but then when it comes to really pursuing who we are and what our sort of calling is, or what our uniqueness is in the world, we can just be really getting in our own way.
Yeah, we certainly can, and a big part of that, of getting in our own way, is our perceptions of the world, our perceptions of a certain event or experience. And that can kind of skew our opinions or our viewpoints of whatever the subject is, and that doesn't get us off on the right track when we already have a skewed opinion or a skewed thought of the world or of a person, or again, whatever the subject is. And upon meeting you, Jeanette, this is the part that I find fascinating, okay? Because with your experience in business, coaching, and training, my emphasis in my background is on the business side and the training side. And I've been in the talent development business and industry for 30 years. And so I just, and this is where I'd love for us to break this down and unpack it, right? So in the world of talent development, and I'm sure you know this, we've always said that, any type of training that you give to someone, no matter what the modality, no matter how it's delivered, it's not impactful unless it changes the behavior of how that person does their job, how they work in my case, because that's the subject matter that I work with. Now, in your work with the clients, like you said, you mentioned the need to go deeper than the behavior and work with them on their being. Can you unpack that for us by explaining, the being and I guess how it relates to relationships?
Yeah, sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love this part of the conversation, because all through my life, I've trained people,
Mhm.
and the people that I've trained that are either really confident in themselves, or
Mhm.
they kind of, they're really suited to the type of training that they're doing, or they've got a real deep care. They really love that. They're
Mhm.
the ones that will go forward and do. You probably get that yourself. You can see that people, it's not just about talent, it's actually
Right.
beyond that. Yeah.
Yes,
And so you can have a talent and really hate what you're doing, and then
that's true.
you may not do it well, or you may not
Mhm.
just put the same level of interest into it.
Mhm.
So yeah, so what we want to do is go beyond behavior. So this being conversation for me is, what is it? Let me just think about this for a minute. So I work with a framework called the being profile and the being methodology. And so what we want to do is look at how people are relating to themselves, because they're
Mhm.
not going to do their best unless they're relating to themselves in such a way that
Mhm.
they're willing to take courageous steps. Now, one of
Mhm.
those courageous steps could simply be, in the world of learning, could simply be asking questions and not being afraid to ask a question.
Mhm.
Because you can imagine, I'm sure that in your area, you've seen lots of people go through learning or talent, and they just sit back. They're not willing.
Yeah.
They might be so talented, but they're just holding back. Something is holding them back.
Yes.
So it's
Amazing.
beyond. So yeah. So what is actually getting in the way of that behavior in the first place? Is it their vulnerability? Is it that they're so worried that somebody is going to see them in a bad light, or they're going to come across as inadequate? And
Mhm.
if they're to come across as inadequate, what does that do to their reputation?
What is driving that behavior?
What is driving the behavior?
Okay.
That's
Okay.
why we have to look beneath the behavior itself, because there's something
Yes.
driving it.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
Very, very fascinating and intriguing. And you know what? That that makes all kinds of sense because uh, there's a source for everything. There's got to be a source for this behavior. Why this person with this talent is holding back, right? And it sounds like with your transformational methodology and the being profile, that you have those tools to work with your clients to unpack, to help them realize, right, and get to the essence of beneath the behavior, what is driving that behavior, and to me, that's what it really sounds like, and it's an incredibly tremendous journey of self discovery, self awareness, and introspection. Is that kind of how the methodology goes?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You
Okay.
create some kind of reception in someone. And
Yes.
reception is that moment where they just get something differently.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
that aha moment. All of a sudden you get something in a different way and you sit back and
Yeah.
go, aha, I see that.
Yeah.
But it's not just about seeing something differently in the world, it's seeing something differently in you.
Yes. The light bulb comes on and it
Yes.
shines on yourself where
Yeah.
you could see what was in the dark before that was maybe subconscious or involuntary. I mean, you just reacted and didn't know or see it there the whole time.
Perfect. Yeah. Beautiful. Now, there's a couple of things here.
Okay.
One is that with awareness, one is that we will see something
Hmm.
newly that we've
Hmm.
never seen before. The other
Hmm.
one is that it's always been there, but we might be looking away from it.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, and that is because we're trying to guard ourselves. So remember I talked to you about vulnerability?
Yeah.
So it's like the lens, the shutter speed on a lens. If you don't want to see something, you're
Yeah.
going to close that shutter very quickly
That's right.
and look away.
Yeah.
And so that's what this is like. You've either seen something for the very first time,
Hmm.
or there's always been something for you to look at, but you're not willing to look at it in case there's some kind of hurt or repercussion, or you want to keep yourself guarded from that pain.
I see. But the progress begins when you see and recognize that pain, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you want to have all the component parts of yourself put together,
Hmm.
if you want to be effective in your life, if
Hmm.
you want to have great partnerships, if you have to look at
Yes.
where things are not working for you. So for example, if you're really struggling to forgive yourself for something,
Yes.
then there's something to look at there
Yeah.
and for you to see.
Hmm.
Or
Hmm.
if you're struggling to forgive others,
Hmm.
or you're really struggling with your own self-compassion, that's there, or the compassion for others, or there's something not quite going right in your partnerships, whether that's at work or at home or in the
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
There's always something to see. And so rather than looking at how we can do things differently, we want to flip the paradigm and say, how can we look at how we're being?
Yes.
If I'm not assertive, for example, if I go out into the world and I hold myself back in conversations and I don't share my views and opinions,
Right.
then how is that going to impact on things? It's the productivity can go down.
Yes.
All of those things. If I don't have the courage to stand up and say what's there for me to be said,
Yes.
what impact is that going to have?
I see. I see. And those are questions and those are statements, right, that we have to ask ourselves and face ourselves. And one thing I think I've read on your website, own who we are, right? We must own who we are. That means accepting the flaws, the assets, the attributes. I mean, all together, and so um, in working with your clients, and you don't have to name any specific names or anything, Jeanette, but I mean, what are some examples of um, maybe something one of your clients has articulated to you in what they've learned about themselves in making that transformation, with your support?
Mm. Yeah, well, so many of my clients struggle with self-agency. So the agency, which essentially means that you are the agent in your life.
Yeah.
Everyone is. We can't
Yes.
deny that we are.
Right.
But self-agency is having freedom in your choices and really looking at yourself through a different lens that
Hmm.
you can actually go out in the world and choose.
Yes.
And so, okay, let me give you, all of my clients go through that. Every one of them has that
Hmm.
transition from lacking in confidence and lacking in assertiveness and
Yes.
really struggling to be courageous. And
Yes.
then all of a sudden they see that they actually don't have to change themselves
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
to be those things. So it's like people categorize themselves. I'm shy, I'm introvert,
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not assertive. And so they say all these
Hmm.
they affirm these things about themselves,
Yeah.
which then that's like a declaration. It starts to get in the way of how they're showing up. So one client in particular, it was so interested in starting a social impact movement here in Australia. What this client wanted to do was
Hmm.
to start this movement. And I won't say what it was because I don't want to
Right.
disclose who she is.
Sure.
And so she started it. She started this company, and she was struggling with the relationships, really struggling with moving forward in that.
Hmm.
But what she had discovered in that process was that she thought that she had to be a certain way when she got up on stage.
I see.
She thought that to get up on stage meant that she had to be loud and outspoken and someone that's a bit flamboyant or whatever the image was
Yeah.
that she had of a person that got up on stage.
Hmm.
She, in her eyes, wasn't in that image. So we didn't look at how she could change herself. We looked at how she was viewing herself.
Ah,
And what her
okay.
relationship was with the person that she is.
I see.
So we looked
I
deeper.
see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to get ahead of myself, but in your explanation of that alone, Jeanette, leads me to think that when you go deeper and do the extraordinary work that you do to help them see the light and see and recognize, their current state of being and do what's necessary to kind of um, change that being or make adjustments. It sounds as if that organically causes a shift or change in the behavior, which I guess is a level higher, not deeper.
Completely. It completely changes things. So this person
Okay,
also works in an organization.
gotcha.
And so now you should see how she's carrying herself.
Yes,
And,
yes,
and she's carrying herself uniquely to her, but it's this subtle shift,
yes,
right? It's not a forced thing because it
right.
can't be forced. It has to be unique to you. So this
Yeah.
is the magic. The
Wow.
magic, the magic is in who you are uniquely, and how can we get you to not be like everybody else. So this is one of the content that we're listening to out in the world all the time is all these comparisons.
Yeah. Oh man, it's
Oh,
yeah. That's lethal. That's lethal.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So in the work that you're doing, going deeper to the being, um, and this is what I am interpreting as the magic that you're referring to. That work is done where it's not really visible to anyone, and may not even be visible to the person you're working with. So it's present, but it's not as visible. And those slight tweaks and changes upon recognizing it has such a profound impact on how they carry themselves out in the world where it is more visible to people, it's present, and it sounds like all sorts of different benefits, like maybe closer relationships with families and coworkers, maybe increased or improved performance, maybe more focus on handling projects or more focus on their work. Is it those types of benefits personally and professionally?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
You actually have. So I thank you for saying it that way, because it is very subtle sometimes. And sometimes, and I know for myself, whenever
Yeah.
I've gone through my transformations, and it's ongoing, by the way,
Yeah.
through it, you kind of go, oh, what just happened there?
Yeah. Right.
I don't know what that is, but I'm different now. I'm more me. I'm different
Yes.
the way I was carrying myself before. Before, I was less authentic.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
wasn't. So when I talk about authenticity, though, there's a couple of things. One is that it is how we're ingesting content from the world. Are we
Right.
right? We ingest that content, and there's a reality to that. And there's some of the content that we ingest is accurate, and a lot of it is not accurate. So it's
Right.
really real about how we're ingesting that content, but then also how we're expressing ourselves uniquely into the world.
I see. I
Yeah.
see. Yeah. Yeah. And my goodness, when you put it that way, Jeanette, I'm thinking there are so many distractions in this world, right? And with the emergence of technology, while convenient and helpful it may be in so many other capacities, those are distractions too.
Yeah.
Oh my word! Yeah, this is this is absolutely. I love it. I mean, I love it because we have to regulate ourselves, right? So people talk about with technology, the technology is so far advanced and it gives people the ability to do this and AI and just it gets in the wrong hands. People can do this, but there's no regulation around it because the technology was released before any type of regulation. And when I hear that and I think of that, I'm like, yeah, that's true. Um, but there's also another disadvantage, and the disadvantage is there's no regulation of it being a distraction within ourselves. So we as parents, we have to teach our children how to wisely use this technology so it's not a distraction. And we have to kind of monitor ourselves in how we do that as well. And plus these devices can also alter and change our perception of how we view the world too, I would think.
Yeah, I love that. Look, this is a really good conversation right here, because you see, AI is one piece of content.
Right.
Now, what we have to do with authenticity, this is specifically about authenticity, is to find out what we can about AI if we're
Yes.
interested in using it.
Yes.
So it's within our responsibility. Are we going to take responsibility to find out everything we can about it so that we can use it wisely? That's
Right.
authenticity.
That's right.
You have to find the reality of matters, and that's so that you can. And this is where we've got to educate our children as well, to look at things that they're interested in or that they care about.
Right.
Don't just skim the surfaces of that. Find out everything about it.
Go deep.
Go deep.
Yes.
Because we can be listening to content and taking in all these things that other people are telling us, and we're not necessarily doing our part to find out.
Right. No, we're not, and we need to. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially for guiding our children. I tell you again, this type of technology in the wrong hands, or even in the right hands, just not used properly, again has a downstream impact. It can be good or it can be bad, and like you said, it's our responsibility to see how this fully works, right? I think that should have been done and some regulations put in place before it's even released, but again, to me, that's the horse before the cart. And in this way, we now have the cart before the horse, because the technology was released before the regulation of how to use it. So anyhow,
Yes. So as a
Yeah,
consumer, it's really up to us to also do our part. But that's
it
the
is.
same when we're listening to people. So if there's lots of experts in the world. There's lots of people that we go out and we listen to.
Right, right.
And they have all these different views and opinions. We've got to be rigorous in our approach of how we listen to them. And
Yes,
we often only take little snippets of information.
right.
And we take that information, that piece of information, and then we create our own perception around it, right, which can often be inaccurate.
Yes, yes. So
Yes.
true.
Yes, and this is where people are really getting in their own way, is taking all of that snippets of information and then comparing themselves against what's been said.
Yeah, yeah. So that leads to two questions I have actually. You bring this up, and my apologies, when I started talking about technology and regulation, I was thinking I was getting a little bit off the path, but you clearly explained, how that relates, and I appreciate that. And so it leads me to ask the question. First off, um, when it comes to um, someone transforming or realizing or recognizing something, and they're transforming, and or they make the change, um on the other side of that, there's still work to do, right? I mean, you transform, but I don't know, is there such thing as regression, or are we continue works in progress?
Yeah, so great. Okay, so
Yeah.
first of all, you get this moment of reception.
Hmm.
And in that moment of reception, you see something differently. So then you get to choose
Hmm.
what you go out and learn about that. And so you can develop a different perception from that moment on if you want to,
Hmm.
by
Right.
continuing to explore how that relates to you in your life, out
Yeah.
there in the world. And so then at that moment, you get to continually bring awareness
Hmm.
to this new piece of information that you've just
Yes.
got.
Yes.
Not just about yourself, but about what you might be listening to, the world, etc. And then you're constantly forming new conceptions all the time. So you're applying that across different contexts of your
Hmm.
life in the world. And so it is the preparedness to stay with the awareness that matters.
Okay. That
And
that Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. So the preparedness to stay with the awareness and
Hmm.
see how things or matters might be affecting you and might continue to be affecting you in different contexts of your life.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it. 100% agree. And my second question is, this may sound cliche because a lot of people say this, but with all the different distractions and all the different ways that our minds and perceptions are altered and changed depending on our experiences, depending on how people treat us, depending on things that we encounter, with all of that going on in so many facets of our lives, personal lives, professional lives, if we're in academics, that sort of thing. Um, can you help us explain, or tell us, is there any more such a thing as an open mind in this day and age?
Oh, so I'm assuming, let me just get clarity around what you consider to be an open mind
Okay.
first of all. So you tell me explain a bit more about that.
Okay. My thought or perception of an open mind is to have the compassion and respect to acknowledge all sides of a story or all sides of an experience, to be objective in all those different sides of a story or experience. Um, Really try not to be influenced by any preconceived notions or previous experiences that may lead you to emotionally sway one direction or the other, but it's to have just almost like a clean, clear slate wiped from your brain as you look at this, the circumstances or the experience or the encounter, whatever that event may be. That's my thought or perception of an open mind.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
Okay. First of all, it's hard. It is hard to do that because
Yes.
there's not only is there so much content, but we're taking that content in based on the lens that we're looking at that content through. So
Right.
we're always going to be pulled away, which means that we're not being present.
Yes, that's right.
So,
Mhm.
yes. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't do it. I think it's important to, I'm just going to try not to, important to go into things with an open mind, but realizing that we're always going to have our own views and opinions. I think what it is, it's about looking at our own views and opinions and looking at the validity of those.
Yes. Yes.
It doesn't mean you can have a view and opinion and still be in a conversation and value somebody else's view and opinion. And you might not agree with it.
Right.
But an open mind, what is an open mind? If it's looking at the possibility that that person could have an accurate conception of reality.
Absolutely.
Then I think that that's an important place to get to.
Yes. Yes.
So we're looking at the rigorousness of this. So we can often be so attached to being right.
Mm.
And
Yeah, I'm trying not to get on my soapbox, but please continue with your thought because I'm in total agreement with you.
Yeah, we can be attached to being right, and yet we may not have all the information ourselves.
That's right. Yeah,
we've got a perception, we've got a view, an opinion, but we might not have looked at things from all different angles. So for example, I might not have looked at it. So here's you and I, right? It's us, me, you, and I'm listening to you, Aubrey, and I'm taking on your views and opinions, and you're doing the same with me. We're taking it on. We're having this conversation that's pretty open. Now, to expand on this, we would have to then look at others. We have to look at the perceptions of others, the world. If we wanted to continue this conversation, we got to go and look at the world, right? So that's the thing that we often find very difficult to do, is to shift ourselves from the immediate conversation that we're in with ourselves and with the other person opposite us, to expanding our perspective outward to others and then a global perspective. So we call that the leadership perspective.
The leadership perspective?
Yeah. So
gotcha.
Taking the perspective is being able to do that.
I see. But wouldn't that result in an infinite number of perspectives? Because everyone's different. Everyone has a different perspective. Maybe not infinite, but however many number of people there are in the world, 8 billion, 10 billion, I don't know. But yeah, to have the ability to do that is absolutely, man, we'd have to put in some serious time and some serious conversations, to work on how do we expand that out to the world, right? To get all of the perspectives. I like that term, leadership perspective, and such a clear way of describing it. So, Jeanette, I want to really, really, really thank you for that. One last thing I wanted to ask you is, and this is in a lot of cases, a lot of my listeners have been in this state. We're all human. We've all been in this state before, okay? But I want to speak in reference to those who may be alone or feel like they're alone, those who have shame or trying to work themselves through shame. Maybe they have guilt, okay? Regardless of the experience and what they've gone through, it results in guilt. They may have imposter syndrome. They may have, who knows, let's say guilt that they survived a an event and a loved one lost their lives. I mean, those types of things, dark days, right? And I I want your thoughts on this. If you can break this down, because what I just mentioned in those circumstances, um, it ties into what I felt and what I thought when I was reading one of your articles. Okay, you have an article called um, you have an article called "A Soul Love Letter," and in this article, you explain the constructs of words that play in our heads that we've gotten to the point where we've bought into, and how that has perpetuated us in our inability to realize our truth. So in this article, you also mention about a beautiful experience that we can have when we step away from those constructs. Okay. For the sake of people going through dark days, feeling shame, feeling guilt, beating themselves up over just any of those types of detriments. Can you unpack that for us in stepping away from that type of construct?
Yeah, well, oh gosh, this is a big one because I really acknowledge that people who are having dark days and they're
Mm.
feeling guilt and shame are often feeling, well, there's aloneness and isolation and all kinds of things that come with that.
Yeah.
And so I acknowledge that, if they're sitting there listening to this, that it's not an easy road for them to just, it's not a quick fix.
Right.
And honestly, it's not easy to get connection, but that's the reality, is that we need connections in our life.
Yes.
So I also acknowledge that it's for somebody who's experiencing that shame and guilt or embarrassment, that shame is like the deeper part of it. Guilt is something that we can tend to handle, but shame
Yeah.
is deep. Shame is like your public identity is at stake.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So that's about going, I now don't know how to be in the world because, all
Hmm.
the people who are shamed publicly, that's what that is. That's
Right.
wanting to shut yourself down and off.
Mm.
So your question was really around unpacking how they can how they can see that there are different perspectives or ways of looking at things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they can be in a better position to realize what their truth is, and the potential that they have to be to have the growth that they look for.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So words matter,
Hmm.
but it's not just about changing our words, and then
Right.
obviously, and then our reality will change. We can try and do that, but if you're in a deep shame experience, or if you're feeling embarrassment or guilt, it's the underlying what's going on to hold you there in that place in the
Right.
first place that's really important to look at.
Yes.
And then you could, so for example, if somebody's feeling deep shame, they can look in the world and say, well, where did that shame come from? Where
Right.
did that start from?
Right.
And start to unpack the ways in which they've been listening to the world, because often their the conception of people's reality is not accurate. So they might be listening to somebody judging in a particular way. So just say somebody has, let me just give you an example of a marginalized. So somebody's just, discovered that, or always known that they're gay or lesbian, or just say
Right.
they've always known that, but they
Okay.
haven't come out about it
Yeah.
because shame around that. Now, obviously things are different these days, but there's still
Right.
that. Well, there's still that there.
Hmm.
So just say that that's their shame.
Okay.
Then what we need to do is get as close to reality as we possibly can. So that's not something that they can change within them. They can try and change that all they like, but they can't change that within them. So look at the
No.
reality of it. Get as close to reality as possible.
Right.
People who are judging that in the world haven't got an accurate conception of reality.
Mm.
Let's say somebody commits a crime, and they know they've committed a crime and they've got shame around committing that crime. The reality is they've committed a crime, but there's also lots of other things that have led up to that moment of committing that crime.
Sure.
So without making excuses for yourself, but going to the reality of who you have thought you are, what your belief structures are, where you grew up, what is that reality? And really get real about how things have been, because it's not until you do that that you can start to move forward. You can start to take responsibility for yourself.
Yes.
And step out of that. You can step out of the cloud that you're feeling like you're in.
Yes.
So I think in answer to that, essentially it's stepping out of the cloud to what you're in. It's like you can have agency over your life. You can have agency over your life. But you have to get real about what's there first.
Yes. Totally. That definitely makes sense. I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
Yeah. So I was just thinking, the person who's in a dark place right now is you're ingesting a lot of content.
Yeah.
Get real about that content. That content's out there, but it's not necessarily accurate with reality.
That's right.
Right. So your shame doesn't have to be a reflection of something out there. You can actually shift your shame when you get real about the content that you're listening to and how accurate it is. So for women, for example, it might be, there's a lot of, this is not just for women, by the way, it's for men as well. But there's a lot of body shaming, right, issues in the world, and a lot of,
so true,
expectations around how we should look.
Yes.
And that's starting to infiltrate into males as well. So if we're worried about the way we look and we think that we should look a certain way, or we're body shaming ourselves, remember that that's actually coming from cultures that have put that in place. There's certain constructs that have been put into place that we are taking on ourselves. And we don't have to take it on. But if we are taking it on, it's so important to hook up with the right kind of information. So, for example, there's really powerful people on Instagram that are anti-body shaming and all kinds of things, and they're making great waves in the world. Our Australian of the Year last year is doing that. It's terrible because I can't think of her name, but just look up, it's body shaming Australian of the Year, and you'll find her. So that's the sort of thing. That's the sort of thing we have to do, is to separate our shame from, but see it through the lens of the content that we're taking on.
Right.
So we're taking on our parents' expectation of us, or our community's expectation of us. Is that our expectation?
Right. Is it aligned? I mean,
Is it aligned with our values? Are we? Is that what we really want for ourselves? Yeah.
Tremendous insight. Oh, Jeanette, this has been such a delight. It has been an absolute educational experience for me. So in having this conversation, sharing your deep insights for the listeners' benefit, I want to ask you, how can the listeners connect with you, learn more about your great work, learn more about being, and how to get in touch with their being to realize and feel the true power of transformation?
Okay, so there's a few ways. So they can go to my website, JeanetteMundy.com, and they'll find lots of stuff there. Or they can go to the Genesis website, ENG. I'll put a link in that. We'll put a link in the show notes anyway.
Yes.
Because that's where I'm writing up-to-date articles about all of this, and also that's where they can find out about the being profile. But they can connect with me for a complimentary discovery session as well. So we'll put a link into the show notes about that too. But I would absolutely be delighted to have a conversation with people.
Oh, yeah. Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Yes, and we will definitely do that. We will have a link to In Genesis. We'll have a link to JeanetteMundy.com, as well as a link to the discovery call, the free complimentary discovery call that you can have with Jeanette Mundy to see where your current state is and to just get an idea of what potential and what absolute extraordinary revelations you can find in working with Jeanette. Jeanette, I want to thank you so much for coming on to the show. I mean, really, really appreciate the insights that you have imparted upon me, upon the audience, upon the listeners. I mean, any of these can apply to anyone's situation in life and in this world. So again, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Aubrey. It's been a great pleasure. I've loved unpacking this conversation with you.
Oh, likewise. It's been a thrill for me as well. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening. And look, as always, we want all of our listeners to know that when they're dealing with life struggles, you never, ever need to be alone. And there's always hope. Please share this show with someone you know who needs inspiration and motivation. We're all on this journey of life, and it sure feels good having you on the road with me. Until next time, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll chat again soon. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Road to Rediscovery. We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email at roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com and leave us any questions or comments you may have.